Hello and welcome to Davey Forum's podcast for Monday the 10th of July, and joining me on this edition, our audio reviewer Ed Selly.
All my life I've awaited your coming and dreaded it.
Assistant editor Steve Withers.
You know the saying, human see, human do.
And special guest Mark Botwright.
If anybody's listening, that is.
Hello, welcome back to the podcast, and if you are of a certain age, unfortunately Grotbags is dead. And I think of a certain age, I think everybody on this podcast applies for this one. So Carol Lee Scott, who played Grotbags the Witch, if you don't know what you're talking about, like if you're under 30, for example, she's passed away at the age of 74 this week, the week that we're recording the podcast. So she obviously appeared as the witch in Rod Hall and Emu shows. If you remember Rod Hall and Emu, well done. From 1982 to 1989, and then she had her own show, Grotbags, which was 1992 to 93, which I don't remember that one because obviously I was.
Well, it only ran for one season, so I'm guessing it wasn't a massive hit.
Yeah, I was an adult by then, so I mean, 82, 83 was 84 was probably around the time I would be watching this as I came in from school as a child. Don't know about you, Mark.
Yeah, got a vague recollection of it, to be honest. It's all a little bit hazy.
The drugs, man.
yeah.
What? It's 6-year-old you were taking drugs. Well done.
No, but remember, about that point, Orange Squash had Tatrazine in it, so we were actually all absolutely off our faces 100% of the time.
I didn't have that. I had, what was it called again? The one that you made yourself?
Soda Stream.
Soda Stream. That's the one.
I was banned from having orange juice.
Well, yeah, almost most once they realised what Tatrazine was doing to people, essentially we were buzzing all the time. We had a Soda Stream until I tried to make fizzy milk. Don't put milk in a Soda Stream, kids.
Anyway, we're getting sidetracked. Steve?
I vaguely remember her. I obviously have no memory of her being anything to do with Rod Hall or Emu, to be honest. I just remember Grotbags the Witch. I don't think I particularly watched. I think it was on ITV, and I was I still am a snobby about this thing. I don't really watch ITV, so didn't really see it. My memories have basically been skewed somewhat by the fact that all I can think of when I hear about Rod Hull and Emu is the manner of his death.
Yeah, fixing a TV.
Was it during the '99 Champions League Cup final?
It was one of football events, and he went up on the roof to fix his aerial, and unfortunately came to rather.
But see, in my imagination, he's up there with Emu, and they're fighting with each other, and that's why he fell off.
No, Emu wasn't involved. Otherwise, he'd be on trial for his death, wouldn't he?
I do love the Billy Connolly's quote about when he did the show with Parkinson and Rod Hull and Emu, and before the show started filming, he grabbed Emu's throat, Rod Hull's arm, and said, "You try anything on this show, and I'll break his fucking arm and your fucking neck."
What hell is he Irish, Billy Connolly? Is that something we don't know about him?
But yeah.
Anyway, sad period. From everyone's kind of childhood.
Well, we haven't gone to Ed yet.
She wasn't on SSVC, so I only know her via the medium of YouTube.
All right, okay. Well,
Sorry,
I'm sure there's loads of YouTube up there. Yeah. So yeah.
So
I mean, if you sell green makeup, it's possibly a sad day for you because she obviously required quite a lot of it. But it's one of those things like a number of people who pass on. She hasn't exactly been prolific these last couple of years. I mean, I don't even know if she was doing panto or something. It's sad. It's part of people's childhood, but world keeps spinning. Sorry.
But that was from an era of kids' TV where it seemed genuinely anarchic, though. And
yes,
people didn't go on for long careers. They're just like, if you tried kind of commissioning something like Rent-A-Ghost now, you'd be seen as mad. It was just kind of very strange ideas all throughout, from pretty much late 70s through to the late 80s. There were some very, very odd things on UK.
I think going back to what Ed was saying, there was a lot of drugs going around in the TV creators' script rooms, I think, as well.
Although saying that, I mean, that show had quite a long run. That was 6 years. So that's quite a long time when it comes to kids' TV. And talking about kids' TV, I just read it on the web because I didn't even know it was still going. I thought it died years ago, but seemingly Blue Peter is in trouble.
Yes, it had no viewers.
Nobody watched it.
It's one of those things, isn't it? It was always Blue Peter. You always got the sense, even when you were watching it as a kid, that it was worthy.
Yeah.
And children these days are not wildly keen on the construct of worthy.
Yeah. I only watched it to see John Noakes doing something ridiculous that might kill him, basically, i.e. climbing up Nelson's column and that sort of stuff. That was the main reason for watching.
You see, he was slightly before my time.
But you see, the other thing was, though, it was always 5 past 5 on BBC One. Now, 5 past 5 on BBC One nowadays is pointless. As in the
Yeah.
programme, not pointless as in pointless.
Possibly both, actually.
Yeah, I mean, now that you've got CBeebies and all the rest of it, it seems to be that everything's moved off the main channels now. So, it used to be as a kid, when you came home from school, you had a whole lot of choice on ITV and on BBC in terms of what you wanted to watch, cartoons and long-running series like Blue Peter and that kind of thing. Whereas now you look at TV and you've got to go and find specific channels, and it's not on the main channels nowadays. So it doesn't surprise me that something like Blue Peter doesn't get watched because it's hidden away somewhere.
CBeebies is still quite a big deal. I say this as someone who has it on, possibly more than
I'm guessing you watch it a lot more than we do.
This is probably true. I mean, it's interesting that some legacies of our childhood have survived seemingly utterly unconcerned by the passage of time. I mean, Postman Pat is still being inept. He's now got a helicopter for reasons I don't completely understand.
Is he privatised these days?
It's hard to say. He certainly seems to have expanded his remit into not delivering parcels as well as not delivering letters.
Yeah,
I'd like to see a version of it though where he works for Yodel and just chucks the tactic over the back gate.
Believe me,
Come on,
when I
Jeff,
say
we're going home.
I welcome Postman Pat and his black and white car, and I wonder how many. I wonder how many tribunals he's had to be over the years if he's not doing his job properly, Ed. I mean, that would be an interesting episode if he's sitting with his union rep.
Postman Pat's overtime sheet.
Rural worker as well, isn't he, these days?
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like an allegory for Parcel Force. But Postman Pat is fine. Thomas the Tank Engine, Thomas and Friends, as it now is, that's gone CGI and a bit weird, but it still seems to be able to shift the merchandise. Some of these things just seem to be immortal, and some of them aren't. And Morph. I mean, my son bloody loves Morph. I mean, actually,
Morph is still going, is he?
Yeah.
Well, not by Tony Hart, as you might imagine, but obviously they let the T-boy or T-girl at Aardman Animations.
Tony Hart's dead.
Oh, good.
Oh, dear. But yes. No, Morph is still with us, and my son loves Morph. So it doesn't need to be Wizards Mac, but Blue Peter, going back, dragging this tortuously back on topic, Blue Peter was always a bit worthy. And it also, and I do mean this for both genders, it sort of lives or dies on whether any of the presenters stir, nascent pubescent thoughts amongst the older viewers, be they boys or girls. I mean, let's face it, there have been candidates throughout, almost from the beginning, that people seem to still get very excited over Valerie Singleton, for example. So
until you realise that Valerie Singleton was going out with Joan Armour Trading at the time.
No one's perfect. But yeah, my point is that it needs attractive presentents.
Did Charlie Brooker end up with a Blue Peter?
Yes, he's married to Connie Hutt.
Yes, isn't he?
Yeah, Connie Hutt.
He's
punching well above
his weight.
Him and David Mitchell are punching seriously above their weights, as far as I'm concerned.
And well, I mean, obviously you mentioned John Noakes, and he did do some. I mean, obviously the Nelson's column thing,
bonkers things.
But years later, Helen Skelton did some insane things.
Oh yeah, she's the funniest thing I've ever seen was when she was. It was for Children in Need, I think, and she was canoeing down the Amazon. Which was in itself inherently dangerous, but there was right towards the end. She was supposed to come around a corner, and they had a camera set up, and the TV presenter was going and she'll be coming around the corner any minute now, unless of course she's been eaten by a crocodile.
I think they were just trying to kill her, though.
Well, but the thing is that she was supposed to do X number of kilometres, and she got to that point where I think I'm good to keep going. At one point, she had the not the record for women, she had the outright world record for a distance. Single kayaking in freshwater or something mad. And then she did an ultra marathon and all sorts of stuff. She was nails. Very impressive.
Hard as a coffin now.
So yeah, Blue Peter needs people like that because people will watch that. That's my considered thought for the day. You're welcome.
I like the fact you said Morph. Morph is the version of Withers, but actually Morph's too tall to be Withers.
Yeah, you did say that Morph is still with us, which sounded a bit weird.
Yes, okay, sorry.
Morph's funeral.
Right, enough. Let's get this podcast started. Competitions currently we have what, Mark?
You can win a copy of Logan on Blu-ray. It's the only competition this time. That one closes on the 13th of July and is ever open to all eligible members living in UK, Ireland and Isle of Man.
And do we have any previous competition winners?
Yes, Norvell won the EE4G Action Cam and Viewfinder watch.
Excellent. So that's the competitions that are running at the moment and competition winners. And just quickly before we go on to hardware, a special opportunity really for listeners to the AV Forums podcast and AV Forums members. Have you ever fancied turning up at a TV shootout and giving your opinion on what you think of the technology that you're being shown? Well, Philips are holding an event at BAFTA. It's going to take place on August the 3rd at 6:30 in the evening, sharp, which is a Thursday. If you fancy this and you want to turn up, places are limited to 25 AV Forums experts. Yes, that's right, you are an expert. We would like you to come along to this, or Philips would like you to come along to this event. Steve and I will be there, and the sole reason that we are there is we're going to video it because we think it's quite interesting to see what people think of the TV technologies being shown to you. And also we're going to make sure that this testing, although it's a Philips event, is fair, i.e. we are, as an independent body, we're going to make sure that the TVs are properly calibrated. Well, Steve is. He's going to make sure the TVs, I'm just going to stand and direct them and do the management thing. Basically, we're going to make sure the TVs are calibrated correctly, that they're in their best settings, so they are assessed fairly by you turning up. So if you want to do that, there is a thing on the homepage right now with an email address. You're going to have to do some work for this. We're not just going to give you the email address. So you have to go and find this on the homepage. Click on the email address. There are some things that Philips would like to know about you, such as what kind of AV system you've got at home, what your reference Blu-ray movie is, that kind of thing. Fill all those details in and send them back. And hopefully we'll see you at BAFTA. I'm looking forward to this because I've never been to BAFTA. So we will see you there if you're coming along. Send your email in. And it should be quite interesting. We're not going to say any more about it because we think it should be a bit of a surprise for people to turn up. It's two TV technologies. I think you could probably guess what TV technologies these are.
Wild guess on that one.
CRT.
CRT and plasma.
Yeah.
Head-to-head at last.
So, August the 3rd at BAFTA, if you want to come along to that. If you're in London or around about the London area, I highly recommend you get an email in for that one. Right, so let's move on to some hardware. And Steve, you're still going through these UHD Blu-ray players, which I'm starting to feel sorry for you now because...
Never-ending quest.
Well, it's a never-ending pile, and the thing is, they've all got the same picture quality, basically.
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder to write the same thing without saying the same thing. But I've got two more to go. I'm getting the Oppo UDP 205, yours for a very reasonable 1,600 quid. I'll get hold of that today to test, and then hopefully, if I can finally drag it out of them, the LG UP 970, which is the only other player apart from the Oppos that supports Dolby Vision currently. Had two more in. So we've had the Samsung UBD M9500, which looks very similar to last year's K8500, same kind of curved chassis, which personally I actually think is quite attractive.
I like it. I really do.
Yeah, I do. I think in the lounge that looks really nice. I think a square rectangular black box would look a bit ugly in the lounge, but that curved sort of brush metal finish looks really, really nice in the lounge. So I like it. And it's like its predecessor, it's a really solid player. Great picture and sound, really good for watching streaming services because it always automatically selects the correct frame rate. It's a flawless player, no problems with any discs on it. I've never had it not play a disc. It's well made. It's got a really nice new... it's interesting that they've obviously been listening to feedback because most of the points I raised about the K8500, things like it was a bit noisy. Well, this one's a lot quieter. It didn't have a display. This one's got a display. The remote control was a bit crappy. This one's got a better remote control. And they also got the new, they use the same operating system and smart platform as they do on their new TVs. That's really nice. So they've obviously done a lot of things, listened to feedback and made some changes, and I think delivered a really solid player. I've only got two complaints about it, really. One is, it doesn't support Dolby Vision, but then again, Samsung don't support Dolby Vision on their TV, so that's to be expected, to be honest. But they have dropped 3D support as well, which I'm sure is going to be very controversial. I mean, you could say, well, again, their TVs don't support 3D anymore. No ones do. But it seems a little bit churlish to drop it when people still have old 3D Blu-ray discs and might still have a 3D display but just want to buy a new player. But my big issue with it really is the price. It's sort of costing around 390 quid. and that makes it the most expensive player aside from the Oppos. So really, I think to be competitive, it needs to be around about the 340 mark, because you can get the Sony X800 for 340 quid, and that not only does that play 3D Blu-rays, but it also does SACD and DVD audio as well. So really, I think they priced it a little bit high. I think they actually realise that now, because I did get a text from them yesterday saying we're talking to Korea about dropping the price. So I think had it been a bit lower in price, more like the competition, would have been highly recommended. It ended up getting a recommended badge, because I do think it is slightly overpriced currently as it stands. The other player that I've just reviewed is, it's a games console. In fact, it's the Xbox One S. But a lot of people are buying it as a standalone player, because you can get the 500 gigabyte version for 200 quid, which means aside from the UB300, it's the cheapest way of getting an Ultra HD Blu-ray player into your home. And initially, people were reticent to get it because it didn't support. You couldn't bitstream audio from it initially, but you can now. There's been an app introduced. You just load the app on, and now you can bitstream Dolby Atmos and DTS:X and also Aura 3D. So you can do all the immersive audio formats from it now, which is great. The other reason people were reticent to buy it was because certain reviewers were claiming that it wasn't as good as a Blu-ray, Ultra HD Blu-ray player than other players. And again, I'm going to have to call cobblers on this. As we said last week in the podcast, we're talking about playing ones and zeros off a digital disc to a digital output to a digital display. There's, any player reading those ones and zeros is going to have to output the same ones and zeros. There can't be subtle improvements in picture quality unless the player is doing some processing behind the scenes it's not supposed to be. If a player is outputting what's on the disc directly to the display, they should all be identical. And of course, the Xbox One S delivered a great performance. Obviously it's a games console, so there's certain aspects of it that I don't like as a player. I'm not a big fan of the slot mechanisms for putting discs in and out. I don't like that. It's a personal thing. Obviously you're using a game controller as a remote, which isn't ideal, but you can buy a media remote for about 20 quid if that's what you want to do, which is what I would do personally if I was using it as a player. So you've got one HDMI output, so if your soundbar or AV receiver doesn't support HDCP 2.2 or HDR and things like that, then that's going to really roll it out as an option, I think. It does have built-in Wi-Fi though, unlike the UB300. No display, obviously. Very, very few. On the front, there's a power button and an eject button, and that's it. And the eject button's a bit plasticky, and you have to kind of press it really hard to get it to work. But otherwise, also it isn't a bit noisy, I have to say. I think Mark asked this question a few weeks ago. It's not the quietest machine. It's certainly noisier than any of the standalone players. Depends obviously on where you place it in the room and how loud you listen to movies and that sort of stuff, but certainly it is not the quietest player. It's also not the fastest when it comes to loading and also navigating discs. But that aside, as purely in terms of picture and sound, excellent, absolutely excellent. Same goes with streaming as well, because again you can select it to output automatically 50 hertz or 25 or 24 or 60, which is obviously its native frame rate. And also I've read reviews where talking about the sound being a bit thin. Again, ones and zeros. I put on Pacific Rim and it nearly destroyed the room. There's nothing thin about the sound on this player. It's a digital transport. There's no analog outputs on it at all. So again, if you want analog, it's not going to be the option for you. But a very solid player. Obviously at 200 quid for all that you're getting, and of course you're also getting a games console. It is obviously a best buy. You can't go wrong at that kind of price, and it certainly makes for a viable option in my opinion as a player.
So what's it like as a games console, Steve?
I don't know. I haven't really played any games on it. I haven't got any games. It came with Gears of War, but you had to download it, which is about 20 gig. It would have taken me a month. So.
Yeah, okay. Some good UHD. I mean, they're all good UHD players. You're looking at cosmetics, and you're looking at design materials, and you're looking at analog audio outputs as being the real differences here.
Yeah.
Even with Blu-ray, it's easy to upscale 1080 to 4K. None of the players should be making a mistake doing that. They should all be banging.
No, again,
doing
the
that.
upscaling in the Xbox One S and Samsung was superb. Samsung particularly are really good when it comes to that kind of thing. There's never been a better time right now. If you're looking to buy a player, right now there are some cracking deals out there. There's some really good players. Different prices for different needs and different features for different needs. But you will find something that suits your purposes precisely, and probably at a pretty good price too.
Yeah, I mean, it's really good, and it's under £200 now. If you've got an up-to-date AVR and display and so on, you can pick up a UB300 for under £200. I mean, that's
188 quid.
That's spanking value. Good value. Right, let's move on. Let's go to Ed for some hi-fi. Some zeros and ones here, Ed. But we're talking about the serial number, so it's 00000001.
Yes, we have got Cord Hugo 000001 here, for slightly complicated reasons that I would expand upon in the review. I also now have Cord Hugo 00011. So there's two of them actually. I've got a breeding pair. So yeah, we looked at the Cord Hugo quite a long time ago now. It was a relatively new product when it came out, and it's one of those things where it defies easy description as to exactly what it does. It's a mobile DAC cum headphone preamp cum Bluetooth receiver. But Cord did very well out of it, not least because it was ridiculously good. It was capable of absolutely outstanding performance. Now, this is possibly not the time. Essentially, everything that Steve has been saying about Blu-ray players is largely speaking, I can't argue with any of it. But there are essentially the way that Cord has gone about decoding digital signals and turning them into an analog waveform has been subtly different to almost any other manufacturer active in the industry at the moment. They don't use a dedicated DAC chip. They use a device called a field gate programmable array, which is a sort of very powerful chip which contains no set functionality at all. As the name suggests, they're designed to take on a role once they've been selected by a manufacturer to do whatever it is they're going to do. So Cord uses these things as digital to analog converters, and they use all their own code on it. And let's ignore subjectivity for a moment. The long and the short of it is that Cord's FPGA DACs put in measurements that are just extraordinary. Now, there are obviously arguments about at what point does this become inaudible and so on and so forth. All I would say is that the original Hugo put in a level of audible performance that was pretty extraordinary for 1,400 quid, and the new one, Hugo 2, has been borrowing parts from the curiously named Dave DAC, which costs £8,000. And yeah, I will be writing up over the weekend, but it's an outstanding piece of equipment. It really is, not least because as well as improving performance in a few key areas, it is also a damn sight easier to live with. Cord's managed to get rid of the, I was going to say quirkiness, but no, annoying weirdness that plagued some aspects of the original Hugo's design. They've got rid of that. This is a much more logical product. It is also, I confess, a slightly more expensive product. But yeah, this is quite something.
For those listeners not in the know, Ed, what context would people use a Hugo 2 in?
Well, Cord's been quite ambitious here because it could be used in all manner of contexts. If you had a workstation at home and you simply wanted to have a superb digital-only headphone amplifier, you could run it off the side of your computer as a headphone amplifier. If you want to use it as a standalone digital to analog converter, so if you've got one of these UHD Blu-ray players that Steve's been reviewing and it's got a spare optical or coaxial output, you can then send that signal into a Hugo, and essentially Hugo will completely reclock it, rebuffer it, and then send it out and then send it as an analog signal, and the result.
Hello?
Sorry, bloody cat and microphone just disconnected. Sorry. So yeah, you can use the Hugo as a bolt-on to improve the performance of a considerable number of things. And then finally, as I say, it's got a volume control that works on both the headphone outputs and the line outputs on the back of it. If you've got a pair of active speakers and you've got little or no interest in analog, it's a self-contained control point for active speakers. And much more significantly, if you're using it in that context, unlike its predecessor, sat next to me here is a remote control for volume and input selection. So you don't have to wander up and change things manually. So it's become more practical. It's become better at doing all of its various features at the same time as pushing the performance on as well. So yeah, I'm going to be trying to make sense of that in a review as soon as I possibly can, and you can judge as to whether I'm insane or not.
Okay, that review will be along in August.
Are they going to advertise it in Viz though? That's my biggest question.
I don't know actually.
Because the Mojo, they always advertised in Viz.
Yeah.
I always wondered whether there was a big kind of crossover between kind of puerile humour and audiophile audience, because it is weird seeing it next to, Buster Gonad and his unfeasibly large testicles on one side, and then you've got the Chord Mojo on the other.
I do you know what, they actually did a very wide-ranging advertising campaign. You could see adverts for it on the Tube. I'm delighted it was in Viz. It cropped up in car magazines as well. Although that said, it clearly wasn't without some sort of return, because Mojo has been very, very successful. So yes, and I think often we do get a bit defeatist about these sort of things, where there's no point letting anyone else know about it. It's just preaching to the converted. But no, I don't think it's as simple as that. So whereas Hugo 2, which is, and there's no getting around this, it's £1,800. That's quite a lot of money. Mojo, people, £400 is not inconsequential. I don't want to pretend that it's anything, but people might be prepared to take a punt.
I think you're starting to lose all grasp of reality here, Ed. I mean, £1,300 record players last week, £1,800 DACs this week.
£4,000 loudspeakers.
Loudspeakers. As soon as if AV Forums members are listen, if they're a member of AV Forums, we've already probably bankrupted a lot of people through our classifieds.
This is very true.
So
but yes,
maybe we should be looking at some budget stuff next week.
We're kickstarting the economy here.
Yeah, through the AV Forums classifieds, yeah.
We should be on the honours list.
I'm going from a 200 quid player to a 1,600 quid player, so I'm going in the opposite direction now.
Yeah, but that is daylight robbery. There's no other way of looking around that. I mean, unless they are plating it in 24 karat gold.
It better make tea. That's all I can say.
Anyway, let's move on. Let's go to a brand who have been considered as a budget brand, who have attempted to go up market, and are now, I think, Steve, at the point of maturity in this market, finally starting to hit a nice level of performance versus price, and that's Hisense.
Yeah, I tell you what, if any manufacturer has consistently surprised me in a good way over the last couple of years, it's been Hisense. I mentioned a few minutes ago about liking the fact that Samsung had listened to feedback when it came to the M9500. Well, clearly Hisense have also been listening to feedback from us, and I guess other people, but because each progressive generation of TV has been an improvement on the one before, and that's what you like to see. You like to see a manufacturer who listens to feedback and is striving to deliver something that's better, not just delivering something that's cheap, but something that is well made and delivers a quality performance. And we saw that last year for the first time. When they initially came to market, they were certainly cheap and they had potential, but there were issues. Things like color accuracy was definitely an issue with their first generation of TVs. Last year, we saw TVs that were, again, good value, but extremely well made, and delivered a much better picture performance out of the box, and had really good accuracy after calibration. And they clearly added features in and had been listening to feedback again. And this year, they've taken it another step. So, for example, this year they now have Cinema Day and Cinema Night modes to select, which I have to say are accurate out of the box, impressively so. They have brought in a selection of different gammas, because before you couldn't select a gamma, there was just one gamma, but now you can select things like BT1886 or 2.0, 2.2, 2.4, and these do measure reasonably close to where they're meant to be as well, which is a nice thing to see. And they've also, again, approached it from the point of view of delivering a product that is well priced, but also delivers a quality performance.
Okay,
and
so
I've been reviewing.
Are you going to tell us what the product is that you've been reviewing?
Yeah. I was about to say, I've been reviewing
it's
the
a toaster.
Those Hisense fridges are bloody good, I'll tell you. No, N6800, so 65-inch N6800, which you can buy in John Lewis for £1,099. for
So
a
it's-
65-inch TV.
Is this an OLED or a QLED or a
It's LCD.
ULED they call it, isn't it?
ULED, yes. This is not ULED. ULED's their top of the tier range.
Right.
This is, I think it's meant to be the ultimate LED, but this is an LED LCD TV. It supports 4K, obviously. It does support HDR. It's only got brightness up to about 460 nits, so it's not the brightest TV. It's reasonably accurate in the HDR I'm talking about here. When you select the Cinema Night HDR mode, that tracks the PQ EOTF pretty closely. The color accuracy could be better. There's also a day mode as well for HDR, which actually basically boosts the entire curve to make the whole image brighter for watching HDR during the day. So it's pretty accurate for HDR. It's actually very accurate for SDR though. The Rec 709 accuracy, really good tracking across all the saturation points. Pretty accurate, like I say, out of the box. Errors less than 3 in the case of both grayscale and color gamut. And then obviously you can calibrate that and get errors less than 1. So that's really impressive. Scaling's pretty good. I thought the picture quality was excellent actually. For general TV viewing, I thought it was really good, particularly during the day. You get a really nice picture during the day. The filter on the front isn't great, so don't stick it in front of a window. And I'd say don't do that anyway with any television. But watch out for reflections. But during the day, really great performer. At night time, also very good. Although obviously it is edge lit, so there's a degree. You're never going to get 100% uniform backlight when you turn all the lights out in the room. You will see a little bit of clouding on dark scenes. That's just part of the nature technology. Really does have local dimming, but to be honest, it's not very good. It doesn't make a massive difference to the back levels anyway, because it's actually out of the box. Just with local dimming off, I measured the black level at 0.02 nits, so that's pretty good for an LCD panel. And it's also quite slow to react, and you can see it working basically. So I would leave that off. But even with it off, I still think it delivers a really good picture. And for £1,099, that for a 65-inch TV, that is genuinely impressive.
Yeah, there's not many 65-inch TVs around the grand mark. That's a lot of real estate for the money. And if you're saying it's reasonably accurate as well, that's a big step up.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. It's not just that it's cheap; it's also well made. I mean, it's like the other TVs last year, weighs a ton because they use solid metal construction in these TVs, and they're really well made. So you might think Hisense cheap, and yes, £1,099 is cheap for a 65-inch LCD television, 4K and HDR support as well. But you're getting a quality product out of it, and so I've got to say, like I said, I've been consistently impressed by Hisense over the last couple of years, and continue to be.
It is absolutely insane. I mean, obviously, we're talking a lifetime ago, but I can remember working in Richer Sounds in 2002, and we had an LG, absolutely standard def, gigantic plasma monitor, no tuner, no nothing, and it was considered astonishing that we could do it without bracket for £1,999.95.
That was really cheap back then, because you got to look at the Pioneer roundabout then was touching 10 grand, I think.
I mean, I know it was unquestionably impressive, but yeah, it's one of those things where things really have gone bananas in television terms. So I never ceases to impress me.
A friend came around on Wednesday night, and he hadn't seen. He was saying, "I'm thinking of buying a cheap TV for the lounge, just for watching TV and playing games on and stuff like that." And I said, "Well, you should consider the Hisense." And he said, "Well, put it on. Let's have a look at it." And I put it on, and he was genuinely impressed. He thought, "Bloody hell, that's way better than the Panasonic LCD TVs currently got in the lounge." He said, "That's really impressive." I said, "I've got to admit, you can't go wrong. You cannot go wrong for that kind of money. It's an impressive performance."
Good. I think we have to add in here, Steve, a little bit on the expectation levels. So people should not go into this thinking it's going to have amazing black levels and amazing uniformity and all the rest of it. For the money versus performance, it is absolutely bang on, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the black levels are pretty good for an LCD panel, but clearly, bear in mind, it is an LCD panel. And like I said, edge-lit backlighting is always a bit of a lottery too.
Is it a VA or an IPS?
It's VA.
Right, okay. So the black level should be pretty decent then. It's just
like I said, 0.02 nits is quite good, actually.
No, it sounds like a cracking little TV. Right, so let's move things on. Movie news next. Right, so film time, and yet again I went to the cinema. So Steve, I worked it out because you were saying last week that you'd made your money's worth on your Limitless card. We'll have to get this right because it's Odeon is limitless, whereas Cineworld is unlimited, isn't it? So,
Unlimited, yeah.
So we've got to get limitless right. So I actually counted up what I'd actually seen in June. So it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 films. Because I saw Baby Driver on the 30th of June, so that still counts as June. So I saw 5 films, so even if that was £10 entry on each of them, I'm well in the money in terms of
you
the card, right? So it obviously got used this week as well, because it seems to be a trend at the minute that films are opening on a Wednesday or even on a Tuesday to get their opening weekend
box office high.
So already seen Spider-Man Homecoming. Both of us went to see that yesterday. I have to stress that not in the same cinema and certainly not at the same time. I'm sensible. I go and see it early evening, so I'm back at a reasonable time and can go to bed early. Steve likes his late night, so I'm going to let you go first on this one because I went first on The Mummy, and so you get first dibs at this. What did you think?
I know, I absolutely loved it because, and I got to caveat that by saying that clearly that's coming from someone who was a Spider-Man comic fan as a kid and also has watched all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe films and therefore appreciates the little bits and pieces in the film that obviously nod towards those. But I thought they absolutely nailed the character of Spider-Man because he's meant to be a kind of, a cheeky kid. That is the way the comic's written. He's at high school. They've got a young actor playing him rather than someone who's in their mid-30s, which is great. I thought they nailed the character, both Peter Parker and Spider-Man. I thought it was an entertaining film. A little bit too long. I don't know what is about modern films. Why they seem to need to be so long, I don't know.
Jesus.
What happened to the cheeky 90 minutes and you're in and out?
Yeah, I know, because even my cinema has nice comfy seats and the standard seating, but even so, I was moving around and fidgeting. The third act really was.
Yeah. But I thought they did a great job of fitting this new Spider-Man in with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because obviously it's produced by Sony, but... Well, Sony is the studio, but obviously Marvel have done it for them, and so therefore they can include things like Tony Stark and the Avengers in it, which is great. And I thought it had a really good villain, strong, excellent villain, genuine threat. I thought Michael Keaton was superb, actually, and he really played it well. But they give him a good backstory. There's a certain amount of sympathy for the villain, actually, which is always good. I think you make him one-dimensional, make him a really three-dimensional character with an agenda. And I thought any hero is only as good as their villain, and I thought they had a really good villain.
I've got to say,
and
Steve,
overall,
I've got to say, Steve, that it's usually the villain that puts me off these comic book movies. It's usually when you get to the villain, they're usually because of this, either the superpowers or whatever that the hero has, the villain has to have something that can compete with that, and usually that means going into silly territory like aliens coming through wormholes and all the rest of it, because you've got your Avengers together, so they have to have something that's equal to their power and all the rest of it. And sometimes it just becomes absolute nonsense, and that's when I usually switch off. I agree with you totally on this one. Decent bad guy. You empathised with him as well, because he was just somebody who in the beginning was starting off trying to make a living because society had basically shit on him. So he thought, well, what the hell, I'm going to make my living. So you can, and you could see it from his point of view as well, because what he was doing. He says, and this is no spoiler because I think it's in the trailer. Look at Tony Stark and how Tony Stark started in the world and made his money. Am I any different?
Really good point.
Yeah. So you were starting from that starting point where the villain makes sense because he's not got any superpowers, as it were. So it's a bit more grounded in reality, and I like that aspect. What annoyed me was the 15-year-old Peter Parker, whiny. His voice was at a certain frequency that just grated on me all the way through. I thought the chemistry with his counterparts was good. I thought the female roles were really good. Yeah,
really well written, and I thought it was really funny actually as well.
Yeah, there was some really good funny things in there. So it had charm. It had characters you could relate to. There was bits that grated on me. Like I say, a lot of his stuff, especially the vlogging angle, that just grated with me as well. But these are things coming from a 43-year-old.
Yeah.
And the target audience is not 43-year-old blokes. So I'll forgive it that one. It's aimed at the sort of high school audience as well. They've got a young actor in there. For the most part, he did really well. Like I say, a lot of his contemporaries were really good. The villain was excellent. Action was really quite good, but it did overstay its welcome. And I don't think it needed Tony Stark really to
I thought that
to prop it up, did it? So he's not there.
It didn't
just
need Tony Stark, but it was key in sense of bringing it into that MCU, and also there was the relationship between the two of them. I thought worked really well, in my opinion. Like I say, I think there's probably the end action scene was excellent. It wasn't one of those massive let's destroy the whole city things. It was kept relatively low key, but still had plenty of threat to it. Thought that worked really well. I thought there was an action scene in the middle, sort of during the second third of the film, that probably was unnecessary, and that's what dragged the running time out. They just tightened up a little bit more. I think I'd have given it a 9. As it is, I'd have given it an 8.
Yeah, I wouldn't score it as high as you, Steve, because I didn't think it deserves an 8. On Facebook, I gave it a 6.5. I'll actually give it a 7, I think. A generous 7, and I go and see it 7. Even if you're not into comic books, like me, and you're not really a big fan of the Marvel Universe, I think it's a decent standalone film. You don't have to have seen any of the other stuff. And it's enjoyable, it's charming, just a little bit too long, and whether the lead grates on you or not is going to come down to you, basically. But for me, I didn't quite fit with him. If that
did you stay to the very end of the credits?
I did, yes.
That was I thought that was quite a funny gag at the end. I did quite enjoy that.
Yes, it's worth sitting there for the whole of the credits to get that. Yeah, and even once that scene had finished, people were still sitting waiting.
There's also a very, very funny line in the film when they're showing a video, and the teacher says, "Yeah, I think that guy might be a war criminal now," which is a reference to Civil War. But I thought was actually really, but we have to show it to you, which I thought was really, really funny. There are some fantastic little nods backwards and forwards to the other films, which really work, I thought. And I think when you consider this is the 6th Spider-Man film, I think this time they've really nailed it as far as tone and character goes.
I've got to say the previous ones, apart from the first Tobey Maguire film, I didn't get along with the others at all, and this is the first one where I'm actually recommending that people go and see it. I think it as a standalone, it works. As somebody like Steve who's into the Marvel stuff, there's lots of payoffs in there as well, like he says, Easter eggs and all that kind of thing. Stan Lee turns up again. He's in all these films.
Oh, he's in every single one. Yeah,
he's got a cameo somewhere. So yeah, it was entertaining enough, and it just like you say, it needed to lose about half an hour off the running time. It just needed to tighten up a little bit. But I'm amazing myself here by saying that I actually quite enjoyed a Marvel movie. So there you go. Anybody else going to go and see it? Mark?
No.
That question was just not aimed at you, Ed.
It wasn't aimed at you, Ed. That's why I said Mark.
No, I wasn't planning to, but it looks at least like they've infused the humour and kind of levity of the other Marvel films. That's something that at least intrigues me. And as I say, it's a strange thing, the kind of Marvel universe. Once you start watching them, you end up watching other ones. Like I was never particularly interested in Captain America, but because of the crossover nature of it all, it kind of draws you in, and I think that's it's very smart, having Tony Stark pop up, having these different characters, because it feels like it is kind of all well woven together, rather than just, they can work as standalone films, but you are kind of drawn into watching different ones that otherwise you might not have been overly interested in.
Yeah, there was a trailer before it. I don't know if it had it for yours screening film.
Thor.
There was a trailer for Thor Ragnarok.
Oh,
which I
Jesus,
thought looked fantastic.
I thought that looked utterly shit.
Really,
and there you have the disparity in the audience that we have.
I couldn't make head nor tail of that trailer. I had no idea what was going on. It was, and the titles that they were using, it was kind of like Tron, and was it Tron? Or was
that was deliberately though. I think as a sort of throwback kind of.
Yeah,
title.
it was just. I'll put my hands up. I didn't understand it. I really did not understand what was going on.
Young people's music these days, you can't hear what they're saying either.
I think to be honest, the Thor standalone films are the most divisive to me anyway, with the possible exception of the Hulk ones, because I don't think anyone's ever done that correctly. But the Thor ones, let's face it, if it wasn't for the fundamental charm of that Hemsworth bloke, they'd be in trouble, because they can just come across as just, well, basically like a prog album cover given life. And that's not necessarily a good thing.
That is what this trailer was like, Ed. It was like, okay, I don't understand. And why's the big green fella in this? Hang on, whoa, where's this set? And I just didn't understand it.
Well,
was there a 9-minute harpsichord solo in the middle of it?
No. It was set to the music. It was set to "Immigrant Song" by Led Zeppelin.
Zeppelin, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're all getting on the Baby Driver thing at the minute, aren't they? The good soundtracks. I hunted down the playlist for that. Funnily enough, it was on Tidal. I couldn't find one on Spotify at all. Strange. It might have changed by now, but when I came out of the film, I have seen it, by the way. We discussed it last week. Steve had seen it at that point. I hadn't seen it. I went and saw it that night after Steve was waxing lyrical about it. 9 out of 10 for me. Absolutely spot on. Edgar Wright back on form after, obviously, the Ant-Man never happening, and World's End, which I thought was for him was a little bit on the poor side, and I just couldn't engage with the characters in that in the same way as Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead. So yeah, back on form. Soundtrack is blistering, and the cinema I saw it in had a absolutely fantastic sound system, and it just made all the difference. There's a lot of funky bass lines in it, and bass drums, and they were hitting you in the chest as the action was happening on scene. So the music was your sound effects, basically, and everything happening and choreographed to the music, and it was such a good soundtrack as well. So for me, there was a couple of points where it slowed down, so pacing was slightly out. I think it needed a little bit of tightening up, but otherwise, other than that, that was the only criticism I had of it. All the actors are really good, all playing excellent roles. And it doesn't outstay its welcome. It's short, sharp, and to the point, and has, like I say, apart from a little bit of pacing in the middle, absolutely spot on. So 9 out of 10, well worth going to see as well. So some couple of good films at the cinema at the minute.
Possibly more to come.
Possibly.
Maybe. So what's opening this Friday, Steve?
Well, opening this Tuesday, actually, as you mentioned earlier, we got War for the Planet of the Apes, which is the third film in the new Planet of the Apes cycle of films.
I'll probably go and see that on Tuesday.
I'm definitely going to go see that.
That'll be a laugh a minute.
It's not going to be a laugh a minute, but I rewatched Rise and Dawn over the weekend in anticipation of War coming out, and I'd forgotten how bloody good they were. They really, I think they've really done a good job with these new films in terms of subtle nods to the previous films, clever ways of inverting your expectations, the balls of having a film where the apes largely spoke in sign language for large chunks of Dawn was incredible for a big blockbuster movie to do that. It took some serious balls. I thought the effects are stunning. I mean, they just get better with each film. And looking at the trailer for War for the Planet of the Apes, I mean, it's totally photorealistic apes at this point with incredible performances from people like Serkis.
I did have concerns with the first couple of teaser trailers. I didn't like the pacing in the trailers. I thought it was a bit. I don't know. I didn't connect. However, there was a new trailer shown last night.
Yeah.
For it, with lots of new snippets of scenes and getting I know a few of the characters a bit better, and that certainly pushed me to this could actually be quite good, because the first couple of teaser trailers wasn't sure about it at all, but yeah, the trailer I saw last night is kind of pushing it, so I'll probably go see it Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah, me too. I'll definitely see it before next week's podcast recording.
Well, you have to. You have to. That's your job.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to that. Also opening on Friday, actually on Friday for a change, we have The Beguiled, which is Sofia Coppola's remake of an old Clint Eastwood movie from the 70s, which I don't know if everyone saw, which I've seen, called The Beguiled as well, which is kind of it's how can I describe it? Set during the Civil War, and it's a kind of a gothic horror / Civil War movie where an injured soldier is taken care of in a school for girls, and things don't go very well. That's about all I'm going to say. But this is the remake.
It's not a porn film.
No, it's not a porn film.
It sounds kind of Dusk Till Dawnish to me.
It's Yeah, it's very gothic in its approach. Well, certainly the original film was, and looks like, looking at the trailers, this film is too. As I said, Sofia Coppola's directing, and Nicole Kidman stars in it, along with who else is it? Kirsten Dunst and Colin Farrell playing the Clint Eastwood part. But yeah, certainly the original film was a very interesting film, particularly in in Eastwood's body of work, and this I'm sure will be interesting too. Unfortunately, it's definitely opening in a tough week. I guess it's going for the female crowd, because you've got War for the Planet of the Apes opening on the Tuesday, and on the Friday you've also got Cars 3 opening, which is obviously aimed at the kiddie crowd. Although I've got to say, and I've heard good advance word, apparently, whilst I thought that Cars 2 was absolutely terrible and a real low point in Pixar's output, Cars 3 apparently is a return to form for Pixar, who haven't made a decent film since Inside Out.
It's getting a lot of positive comments.
Yeah, it's getting a lot of positive comments. And as you said, Ed, the first teaser was grim.
Yeah, it would appear that they've placed more context to that and lightened it up. So it isn't going to be Born on the 4th of July with wheels. But nonetheless, it looks like it's going to explore some slightly more Pixar-y concept. I mean, Cars 2 appears to have just been what happens when you decide the script for a film on a big night out after some Jaeger bombs, and just you've gone too far and you have to go with it. Well, this looks much more sensible.
The thing for me though is honest trailers. Look at Cars. If you haven't seen it, go and see it, because it asks some really, really disturbing questions of the universe, and you actually think, I hadn't have thought of that. And then when you start thinking that, you think, oh, this is a bit weird. So I'm not going to spoil it for people, because it's a great joke. Go see it. Go watch honest trailers, and they do Cars and Cars 2 in the same trailer, which is really entertaining.
I do think, I mean, obviously we hold Pixar to a very high standard, but nonetheless they wanted the opportunity to sell a boatload of toys, and they unquestionably have sold a boatload of toys. I mean, they are absolute kryptonite to small boys. There's no getting around it. Will goes bananas every time you see it, and they're always heartbreakingly expensive. So they've done very nicely there. So yeah,
I actually quite liked the first Cars, the original movie. I thought it was actually quite sweet.
I did as well, and I actually picked up on an important point, which was Route 66. And we've been there.
We discovered that for real, didn't we? We tried to go along, and
we tried to go along it, and
interstate has destroyed those little towns.
Yeah, and even the big towns along there, we drove through Flagstaff, and Flagstaff was not how I thought Flagstaff was going to look. It's nice that in terms of reality, it was following a true storyline and so on. But yeah, the honest trailer thing has kind of ruined it for me, because you're thinking about what kind of universe is this set in. But yeah, it's good stuff. I don't think I'll go to the cinema to see Cars 3, but I might see it on a streaming service at some point. Right, Blu-ray releases. If we're still going out and buying discs, Steve, what can we buy?
Coming out on Monday, we've got today, the day that the podcast goes up, we've got Logan on both 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray and Blu-ray, and also DVD, which we've discussed in the past. Obviously, I thought it was a great film, very, very violent, lots of swearing, but actually a very different take on a superhero movie, very realistic, grounded take, really. And I thought a great send-off for both Patrick Stewart and for Hugh Jackman in the lead role. So, check if you haven't seen it, check it out. It does come, the Blu-ray and the Ultra HD Blu-ray, they come with the theatrical cut and also the noir version, which is in black and white. I really don't see the point of that, but that's there if you're interested. We also got Elle, which is the new film from Paul Verhoeven. Always good to see Paul Verhoeven back. I mean, a really great filmmaker who never makes a dull movie and always pushes boundaries.
Is there an audio commentary on it?
Oh God, I hope so. That'd be brilliant. His audio commentaries are so funny.
The Basic Instinct is one of my favourite all-time commentary tracks. Absolutely, because the way he talks about that scene is hilarious.
He's a funny guy and a talented filmmaker, and he hasn't made much. I think he's made 2 other films in the last 20 years or something like that. So it's good to see him back. This is a French language movie set in France. It's basically a rape revenge thriller, but obviously in the hands of Paul Verhoeven, it's going to be a lot more than that. I'm really looking forward to seeing it. Got good reviews in the review that Kaz did of the Blu-ray release. It sounds interesting, and I'm definitely. And apparently, it's got a great performance from Isabelle Huppert in the lead role. So I'm excited about that. And also, we've got coming out. If you're old enough like me to remember it first time round, Stormy Monday, which was a thriller set in Newcastle, made in the, I think it was 89, 88, 89 it was made, with Tommy Lee Jones, a young Tommy Lee Jones as an American gangster, Sting as a nightclub owner in Newcastle who's mixed in with the mob, and a very young Sean Bean, and also Melanie Griffiths. And that's getting its first Blu-ray release anywhere. So if you're a fan of that movie or want to check it out, a bit of late 80s English Brit thriller, then that's certainly worth checking out. That comes out on Monday as well.
Never heard of it, Steve.
No?
No, I've never heard of that.
It was
one.
Mike Figgis' first movie, first directorial debut. So,
All right. Well, you see, you learn something new every day. Did you know about that one, Mark?
Nope, can't say I did.
There we go. Right, UHD Blu-ray news. There's a small independent studio joined, is there not?
Yeah. Finally, after waiting quite a while, and a lot of rumours, I have to say, Disney have finally joined the Ultra HD 4K Blu-ray party. They are they've announced their first disc, unsurprisingly, is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which pre-orders start this week, 11th of July, and it's coming out, I believe, on 22nd of August, in the States at least. I'm not quite sure about the UK dates yet. The official announcement is we're waiting for that. It'll probably be announced at Comic-Con with all the details and everything. But I think it's a safe bet to assume it's going to be Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos.
I think
I'd be surprised if it wasn't.
I think the Disney press conference is actually on Monday as this podcast goes out, I believe.
Right, so we'll get all the details then. But yeah, looking forward to this. I know James Gunn, the director, has been pushing hard for this release. He was talking on his Facebook page this week about how pleased he was they're going to be doing it, and how how much effort they went. He said, it's an interesting thing. He said, before we did finish it at 4K, but that's not the big thing here. We also put a lot of work into the using the wider color space and HDR to deliver an image, and you're going to get that at home with this disc. So he's really pleased about it. I'm really pleased about it, and I think obviously now that we've got Disney on board, it's going to get really expensive for me.
Dolby Vision.
I think it's going to push Dolby Vision a lot more, but also obviously given the titles Disney have, and now we're talking about not just Marvel, but we've got Lucasfilm, we've got Disney themselves, and we've got Pixar. The number of titles that they could be releasing. Big name titles, like I say, it's going to get very expensive for me.
I'm going to say it first. Original trilogy on UHD Blu-ray and Cat, the non-special editions, please.
Who wants to bet there'll be Ultra HD Blu-ray versions of Force Awakens and Rogue One ready for the Episode 8 release at Christmas?
Yeah, I guarantee that.
So, I mean, big news. I mean, that means that every single studio now is behind the format. Like you say, it's also probably going to be big news. I mean, haven't confirmed this yet. We'll have to find it next week. But if it is Dolby Vision as well, that's obviously a big push for Dolby Vision. Yeah,
that's a massive push for Dolby Vision if that is the case. If Disney come on and they go that way, you can almost guarantee that the entire industry is going to go that way. Just because of the studios they own and obviously the content that they own as well, and are obviously going to push onto disc, that you're going to see everybody else following suit. I don't think anybody else has any choice.
Well, all the other studios, I mean, I think about it, I think so. Certainly already so far, Sony, Lionsgate and Universal have been supporting Dolby Vision so far with disc releases. I expect Warner's and Paramount to come on board fairly soon. I know they've certainly been using Dolby Vision on streaming services, so there's no reason why they wouldn't do it on disc as well. That only really leaves, and if Disney do go on board as well, then that only leaves 20th Century Fox as the only studio not supporting Dolby Vision, who, funnily enough, are quite embedded with Samsung. So, see what happens there. But yeah, I mean, it would mean that all the other studios are supporting it, and that's going to be a massive push.
Yeah. Again, we're not suggesting that this is the quality route. We're just saying that this is the likelihood of what's going to happen. We're not saying Dolby Vision's better than any of the other formats at this moment in time. So we're not endorsing it. We're just saying this looks like the way the industry's going to go.
Yeah.
I guess we really get down to testing very soon, though, Steve.
Yes, this weekend. Actually.
Yeah, it's taking you a while.
This weekend. I shall be doing some in-depth studies of Dolby Vision versus HDR10.
Yeah, okay. Millions of people might believe you, but I don't. I guess that leads us neatly on to if we're going to have an apocalypse and things are going to go to crap, what's our favourite post-apocalyptic movies, Ed?
You really have to ask.
I think I can guess, but go on.
Does it have a car in it?
It might.
Does it involve the words road and warrior?
It might.
Has it got Australian people in it?
Sometimes.
Is it Eric Cartman's favourite film?
I don't know what Eric Cartman's favourite film is, but the Mad Max universe. We've covered what in so many reasons why it's not a remotely compelling view of the future in any sense of the word, but it's magnificent, and I don't care, and I love all of them except Thunderdome, and even then I can probably watch that once every 5 years.
Okay, I'm going to be controversial because I think at the time it got slammed because of the just sheer amount of bank money that it took, and it almost took a studio or two down with it. But I think it's underrated, and that's Waterworld.
Yeah, I do like Waterworld. I think it's
got some deeply impressive moments to it, but it's just so worthy. I mean, if it wasn't for Dennis Hopper, it would be truly terrible.
That's why I love it.
Everything every scene he's in is magnificent. Kevin Costner is just beige with gills in this case.
My favourite bit in that film is the old bloke who lives inside the oil tanker, and they open up the thing and drop down the torch. And he goes, "Thank God!" as the light, the whole thing bursts into flames. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
I do that as a classic.
Yeah, it's underrated. It's an underrated classic. I mean, I'm not saying it's a great movie in any way, but it's fun.
Have you seen the extended cut?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because obviously the first one wasn't long enough.
No. Well, no, but at the end it's made clear that the land they arrive on is actually Mount Everest, isn't it? It's like, how much water do they think there is in the polar ice caps?
And doesn't that mean that also, if that were the case, no one has supplemental oxygen? So how does that work? Because if you're biffing around at the top of Mount Everest, that's not a healthy place to be.
Yeah, your altitude.
I've got to say as well, I don't know if it's still running at Universal because it was a number of years ago that I went there, but the show there, the Waterworld show at Universal Hollywood, great fun as well. Fantastic fun. Yeah, really good fun. Mr. Botwright, your favourites?
Oh, I'm gonna go probably. I do like anything with either kind of zombies, anything like that. So Dawn of the Dead probably stands out for the kind of shopping mall and the kind of consumerism symbology of that. In general, I was trying to think about decent post-apocalyptic films, and I think there needs to be sorry to be a bit of a pedant, but a little bit of a distinction between post-apocalyptic and futuristic dystopian, because it seems like half the films that are listed as post-apocalyptic are just kind of society has gone downhill.
Yeah.
There is no single cataclysmic event. There is no, the fabric of society. I love Akira, but the fabric of society is still there. Logan's Run, there's still a society there. Whereas Mad Max is, there's just nothing. It's just kind of, disparate individuals just scattered across a landscape. That's post-apocalyptic.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you want the definition of post-apocalyptic for me would have to be The Road, not a laugh a minute, but and grim as anything, but people just scrabbling to survive in a post-apocalyptic world. Although my personal favourite is a bit of a probably obscure one, but it's called Damnation Alley. Anyone seen that?
No.
With George Peppard and Jan Michael Vincent.
I wonder why we haven't seen it.
The budget for that must have exclusively gone on alcohol.
It went on alcohol for Jan Michael. Yeah, those two were probably putting a few away. Plus, they had a big truck in it. They were driving across a wasteland, which I quite thought was quite cool. But that was obviously in the late 70s when my expectations were relatively low pre-Star Wars, and and I didn't know any better. So, but I did quite enjoy Damnation Alley. Obviously, Planet of the Apes also for me would qualify as being a great post-apocalyptic, because clearly mankind's had a rough time.
Mankind's had a bit of a tough time, but holding out for a recovery.
It's interesting when you were talking about Planet of the Apes earlier, and there are certain elements within the new films which kind of point back to the original, and one of them is that space launch just before the virus, and I wonder if we'll come full circle on that one.
I hope that's what they're aiming for, that the astronauts are going to come back in sort of a fifth or sixth movie, and it's going to be basically the original Planet of the Apes storyline.
Yeah.
Come back and find a world run by apes.
Well, fair enough. I mean, obviously, this requires me once again to point out that there are so many aspects of post-apocalyptic portrayals that are just unfathomably weird. Like, nobody uses bicycles. I mean, in terms of post-apocalyptic transport, the bicycle is where it's at.
Actually, funny enough, the week that you mentioned that, Ed, the following week there was a scene in The Walking Dead where they were on bicycles.
Yeah.
Well, good. They are. It in terms of maximum return for your available energy and not requiring much or anything in the way of sophisticated tooling or processes. Bicycles are are as good as it gets.
You'd still have to fix a puncture, though. You know, the only bicycle that wouldn't have that is those, you know, like the ones that you have as a kid with the plastic tires.
Well, this is true, but ultimately, it's not that you can patch tires to the point of where there's, you know, not very little of the original tire left, and rubber. Whilst it does degrade, it doesn't degrade terribly fast. We've had this conversation before. If you have a big tank of unleaded petrol, its actual usable life is about 6 months, 8 if you're pushing it. And you can stick a load of chemicals in it, which are expensive and hard to come by, and extend its usability to around 2 to 3 years. But after that, it doesn't matter whether there's a shortage of fuel or not. It's simply not usable stuff. So...
Well, I don't know.
You know,
I think my Mustang could run on anything, to be honest.
Well,
as long as it's flammable and it makes an explosion.
That's something possibly to try nearer the time when you're planning on getting rid of it.
I think that's why they have a V8 in Mad Max. I think that's the whole.
So we're saying then the only car that's going to be running after the apocalypse will be that one that Prince Charles has got that runs on excess wine.
It's very possible. It might be one of the most desirable things going. I mean, I suppose the other one, of course, although there is much, you do require more societal stuff and maintenance to actually keep the damn thing going. Although, again, they're not complicated. Steam trains. They'll go. Although there was that terrible Fox TV series, Revolution, which was dreadful in every single way, not least because the premise was decidedly odd. But mankind had resorted to using steam trains in that. So, yeah, go them.
So basically what we're saying, Ed, is that anybody buying an electric car, once the apocalypse comes, you're
Big time.
Well, again, not instantly, but you've got, you know, you'd be able to keep a self-contained system where you were using solar power and batteries and stuff. You could keep that running for a bit, but after a while, it's just not. It's not. You know, you're going to start needing components that.
But your range isn't going to be very far. So why would you need it? Because probably your range is probably walkable distance. Yeah.
You'd be using it. You could probably, you know, if we're talking about a really exciting post-apocalyptic vehicle like a solar-powered tractor, it would still be quite useful for ploughing, as opposed to doing it by human or animal power.
I'm looking
if you're going
forward
to
to
an agrarian society, that's possibly as good as it gets.
I want to see the Warriors of the Wasteland turning up on their rally choppers. That's what I want to see.
Look, you know,
Ed's version of the apocalypse.
Humongous on a little girl's tricycle.
with tassels hanging from the handlebars.
Yeah.
Well, BMX Bandits was an Australian film.
I was just going to say BMX Bandits could be a completely different movie.
Starring
in
a
that
very young Nicole Kidman.
Shout into the compound, walk away from your puncture repair kits.
Did anyone watch that? Speaking of Kevin Costner's post-apocalyptic films, did anyone watch The Postman? Possibly
no,
the worst title of a film ever.
No, never seen it.
It was dire, absolutely dire. I mean, the concept in itself was ridiculous. The idea of this guy delivering the mail after the apocalypse was a bit pointless.
I mean, there is a that I do remember as a kid. I watched something called Battle Truck, which has to be in the line for one of the worst films I've ever seen, even as a 6-year-old. But that was particularly.
Battle Truck sounds like a similar concept to Damnation Alley. Then, with a big truck driving across a wasteland.
Yeah, a man with a motorcycle trying to stop it. It might be the same film. I don't know. But yeah, that was that was pretty dreadful. I mean, ultimately, we have to be honest with it. It depends, as Mark says, it comes down to whether humanity's hit the bottom and is on the way back up. In which case, you're basically looking at medieval feudalism with some bits and bobs from the before time still in operating condition, or whether we are just circling the drain. In which case, George Kennedy got it absolutely right.
I'm just intrigued by the postman. Is he delivering mail that they're sending in after the apocalypse, or is it old mail he's found?
Memory, it's old mail he's found, and the idea is the rebirth of civilization, and because he's bringing back something that had been lost. But it's crap. Don't bother. It's absolute cobblers.
He's just found like the cache that holds all of the Reader's Digest prize draw letters. And that's what he's dedicated his life to.
And on that bombshell, that's it for the AV Forums podcast this week. My thanks to Steve Withers.
The question is not so much where we are as when we are.
Ed Selly.
Only kids your age wore beards.
And Mark Botright.
Beware the beast man, for he is the devil's pawn.
Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark avforums.com for latest reviews, news and videos, and of course why not leave us those 5-star ratings on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. I'm Phil Hinton, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.